Is your truck's toolbox always full and messy while you only use just a few tools? The tools in this video aren't gimmicks. They're the kind of upgrades that solve problems when you're stuck, hauling, or fixing something on the fly. These are the Harbor Freight. Buys people don't regret, because they actually get used. I'm counting down 9 Harbor Freight truck toolbox upgrades that are easy to justify and hard to replace. Each one is here because it does something useful without wasting space or cash. Starting at number 9. Tool 9. Gordon 12-piece. Emergency Survival Kit. Most truck toolboxes are built around fixing the truck, not dealing with what happens when the truck can't be fixed right away. That's where this Emergency Survival Kit earns its spot. It's not designed for extreme survival scenarios. It's designed for the much more common situation where a small problem turns into a long wait. For $27.99, this kit gives you a ready-made safety buffer, a flashlight for visibility, a knife for basic cutting, fire-starting tools for warmth or signaling, a Mylar blanket for insulation, and a few multi-purpose extras all live inside a compact, water-resistant pouch. None of these items are impressive on their own, but together they cover the basics that matter when time, temperature, or visibility starts working against you. The real value here is convenience. Instead of piecing together an emergency setup and hoping you didn't forget something important, this gives you a single grab-and-forget solution that lives in your toolbox year-round. It takes up very little space, adds very little weight, and quietly solves problems you don't want to be thinking through when you're already stressed. That said, this isn't premium gear. Some of the tools are basic, and buyers who expect long-term heavy use usually end up upgrading individual pieces later. That doesn't make the kit useless. It just means it works best as a starter setup or a backup safety net. If you already run a custom emergency bag with higher quality tools, this won't add much. But if you don't, this fills a gap most truck owners don't realize they have. Once you accept that this kit is about preparedness, not performance, the price makes sense. It's inexpensive insurance against inconvenience turning into a bigger problem, and that same solve it fast thinking leads directly into the next chapter. Because the next tool isn't about emergencies at all, it's about dealing with things that refuse to move when you need them to. Tool 8. Warrior 1500 watt, dual temperature heat, gun. Some problems don't need force, they need heat. And this is one of those tools that quietly saves you time because it solves issues before they turn into bigger ones. For $19.99, this corded heat gun gives you controlled heat for situations truck owners run into more often than they expect. Frozen locks, stiff rubber hoses, heat shrink wiring, stubborn decals, adhesive residue, even loosening. Parts that won't budge when cold. This handles all of that without beating on anything or breaking plastic in the process. It's not glamorous, but it's extremely practical. The reason this earns a spot in a truck toolbox is reliability. Battery-powered heat guns sound convenient, but they're notorious for weak output and short run times unless you spend a lot more money. This one plugs in, gets hot quickly, and stays consistent. When you need heat, you usually need it now, not after swapping batteries or waiting for a tool to warm up. There are limitations, and they matter. You need access to power, a garage outlet, a generator, or an inverter setup. This isn't something you pull out on the shoulder of the highway unless you planned ahead. And it's not a precision electronics tool. It's meant for general purpose heating, not delicate components. But for the price, it punches far above its weight. It solves problems cleanly instead of aggressively, and that alone prevents damage that costs far more than $20 to fix. Once you've used heat instead of force a few times, you start wondering why you waited so long to keep one around. And that idea, carrying a compact tool that handles small, annoying fixes without dragging out bigger equipment, leads straight into the next chapter. Because the next upgrade does exactly that, just on a much finer scale. Tool 7. Bauer 8V Cordless Rotary Tool Kit. This is the tool you reach for when the problem is too small to justify dragging out real equipment, but too annoying to ignore. Stripped bolts, sharp edges, corroded terminals, seized hose clamps, tiny cuts that need cleanup. This is where a rotary tool quietly saves the day. At $42.99, this Bauer kit earns its place, because it doesn't just give you the tool, it gives you the options. Grinding stones, sanding drums, wire brushes, polishing wheels, all included, all packed into a small case that slides into a truck toolbox without stealing space. That matters, because a rotary tool without accessories is useless. This one is ready the moment you open it. The power level is intentionally modest, and that's a good thing in a truck setup. You're not trying to remove inches of metal or cut through frames. You're trying to trim, clean, smooth, or free something without making the situation worse. The smaller motor gives you control instead of chaos, especially when you're working in tight spaces or awkward positions. This is not a replacement for a grinder or a cutoff wheel, and anyone expecting that will be disappointed. It's for finesse work, the kind of fixes that stop rattles, prevent future failures, or clean something just enough to get you home without further damage. Once you've used a rotary tool to solve a problem in 2 minutes, that would have taken 20 with the wrong tool, it earns permanent residency in your box. And that naturally sets up the next upgrade, because the next tool isn't about finesse at all, it's about fast, aggressive cuts when you don't have time to be careful. Tool 6. Warrior 2. Amp Variable Speed. Oscillating Multi-Tool. This is the kind of tool most people don't think they need until the exact moment they absolutely do. An oscillating multi-tool doesn't replace bigger cutting tools, but it fills a very specific gap that nothing else in a truck toolbox can handle cleanly. When something is partially blocked, wedged in place, or impossible to remove without damaging what's around it, this tool turns a bad situation into a manageable one. At $17,999, this Warrior oscillating tool earns its keep by being cheap enough to justify permanent residence in a truck box, and useful enough that it won't sit unused for long. It makes controlled, precise cuts in wood, plastic, drywall, thin metal, and even fasteners without the chaos of a grinder or reciprocating saw. That matters when you're working near wiring, trim, hoses, or anything you don't want to accidentally destroy while trying to fix. One problem: the real strength of this tool is control. The variable speed dial lets you ease into a cut instead of committing all at once, which is exactly what you want when you're working in tight spaces or awkward positions. Flush cuts, plunge cuts, and trimming material right up against a surface are all things this tool does naturally, while most other tools struggle or flat out can't do them at all. This makes it especially useful in real truck situations. Removing a strip screw without tearing up surrounding material, cutting off a rusted bolt head when there's no room for a grinder, trimming plastic or wood that's blocking access to a repair, or cutting a fastener flush so something else can be reinstalled properly. These are all jobs where brute force tools create more problems than they solve. The oscillating motion keeps cuts tight and predictable instead of aggressive and messy. There is one honest limitation, and it's important to understand it up front. This tool does not come with blades. That means you'll need to buy attachments separately, and quality matters more than most people expect. Cheap blades dull quickly and make the tool feel underpowered. Good blades transform it into something far more capable than its price suggests. Once the right attachment is installed, the tool itself stops being the weak link. This isn't a powerhouse, and it isn't meant to be. You're not ripping through thick steel or demoing entire structures. You're solving precise problems in places where nothing else fits or works safely. In those moments, the oscillating multi-tool feels less like a budget compromise and more like the exact right answer. That's why this upgrade earns its spot on the list. It's not flashy, and it's not something you reach for every day, but the first time it saves you from tearing something apart just to remove one stubborn piece, it proves its value instantly. In a truck toolbox, that kind of controlled problem-solving power is hard to replace. The next tool isn't about careful cutting or finesse at all, it's about raw torque, speed, and getting back on the road fast. Tool 5. Bauer 20 Feet Brushless Impact Wrench. There's a clear line between owning tools and actually being able to fix problems when time, weather, or location are working against you. A cordless impact wrench is one of the tools that moves you across that line immediately. It doesn't just make jobs easier, it fundamentally changes what's realistic to fix on the side of the road or in a parking lot. At $159.99, this Bauer 20 Feet brushless impact wrench is not an impulse buy, but it is a practical one. With up to 1,000 pound-feet of breakaway torque, it has far more power than most truck owners will ever need outside of a professional shop. Lug nuts that would normally require body weight on a breaker bar come off in seconds. Rusted suspension bolts stop being a gamble. Tasks that once felt like a workout turn into controlled, predictable work. What makes this impact especially well-suited for a truck toolbox isn't just raw power. it's usable power. The compact body, just over 9 inches long, means it actually fits in a toolbox without forcing you to reorganize everything else. More importantly, the 3-speed drive and variable trigger give you control. Not every fastener should be hit with maximum force, and being able to step torque up or down prevents snapped bolts, stripped threads, and avoidable mistakes when you're working quickly. The brushless motor matters here more than people realize. It runs cooler, wastes less energy, and delivers consistent torque under load, which directly translates to better battery life and more reliable performance when you're already dealing with a problem. That consistency is what separates this from cheaper cordless options that feel strong for a few seconds and then fade under pressure. This is also one of those tools where expectations tend to be low, which is why many buyers are surprised once they actually use it. In real-world use, it performs far beyond what most people expect at this price point, especially for tire changes, brake work, suspension components, and emergency roadside repairs. It may not replace a high-end shop impact, but for truck owners, it doesn't need to. There are 2 practical considerations worth acknowledging. First, buying into this tool means committing to the Bauer 20Phi battery platform. If this is your only Bauer tool, that's not a drawback. It's just something to be aware of. Second, this is not cheap in the way hand tools are cheap. It's a deliberate purchase, but it replaces effort, frustration, and wasted time with speed and confidence the first time you use it. Anyone who has ever changed a tire on the shoulder of the road understands the value instantly. Instead of fighting lug nuts while traffic passes a few feet away, the job becomes fast, controlled, and safer. That alone justifies the space it takes up in a truck. Toolbox. This is the kind of upgrade you don't think about often until you need it. And when you do, it turns a stressful situation into a manageable one. That's why this tool earns its spot. It doesn't just help you fix things faster, it helps you get back on the road. And from here, the countdown pivots again, because the next tool isn't about torque or power at all. It's about cutting through problems when brute force isn't an option, and precision suddenly matters. Tool 4, Warrior 6. Amp rotating handle, variable speed, reciprocating hub. This is one of those tools that doesn't look impressive sitting in a toolbox, but completely changes how certain problems play out once something goes wrong. When parts are bent, rusted, trapped, or simply not coming apart the way they're supposed to, a reciprocating saw stops you from wasting time trying to be gentle. At $27.99, this Warrior saw isn't about refinement, it's about access. It gives you the ability to cut your way out of problems instead of fighting them. Old bolts that won't break loose, damaged brackets, wood blocking access, metal that's in the wrong place. This tool exists for situations where removal is faster than repair. The 6-amp motor, pushing up to 2,500 strokes per minute, is more than enough for that kind of work. What separates this from cheaper saws is the rotating handle. That sounds minor until you're trying to cut something overhead, inside a wheel well, under a trailer, or at an angle where a straight grip forces your wrist into a bad position. Being able to rotate the handle gives you leverage and control without wrestling the tool, which matters a lot when you're tired, rushed, or working in awkward conditions. This is also a realistic truck tool. It's not huge, it's not heavy, and it doesn't demand perfect technique. You don't need a workbench or a clean setup, just enough space to get the blade where it needs to go. That's why it earns its keep outside a garage. There is one honest catch. No blade is included. That's not Harbor Freight being sneaky. It's just how these tools are priced. But blade choice matters more than the saw itself. A cheap blade will make this feel slow and frustrating. A decent blade makes it feel like a completely different tool. Plan for that, and the value equation changes fast. This isn't something you'll use every weekend, but when you do need it, nothing else in your toolbox will replace it. It's the difference between being stuck and moving forward. Quick pause. If this breakdown is helping you make smarter buys and skip the junk, hit like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm this kind of practical content is worth surfacing. The next upgrade goes in the opposite direction, smaller, quieter, and far more precise, built for the kind of fixes where cutting everything apart would create more problems than it solves. Tool 3, Bauer 6-gallon wet-dry vacuum. This is one of those tools that doesn't sound like a truck. Upgrade until you've needed it once and didn't have it. Then it immediately makes sense. A wet-dry vacuum earns its place because trucks don't just haul clean cargo. They collect sawdust, gravel, drywall dust, spilled fluids, leaves, mud, and whatever else ends up in the bed or cab over time. At $54.99, this Bauer 6-gallon unit gives you a way to clean up messes properly, instead of pushing them around with a broom or pretending they're not there. The size is the key here. 6 gallons is big enough to be useful, but small enough to stay manageable. You're not lugging around a full shop vacuum that eats half your storage space. But you're also not stuck with a tiny handheld unit that clogs immediately. It hits that middle ground where it actually works for real cleanup jobs. What makes this practical for truck owners is the onboard storage. The hose, wands, and nozzle all stay attached to the unit, which means you're not hunting for parts when you need it. That matters more than people realize, because tools that come apart easily also get left behind easily. This one stays self-contained. It's also versatile in a way most people don't think about. Dry debris, standing water, wet leaves, spilled coolant, it handles all of it. If you've ever had water slosh into a bed liner or leak into a cab, you already know why that matters. Being able to remove liquid cleanly is the difference between a quick fix and a lingering smell. This isn't a premium vacuum, and it doesn't pretend to be. You're not paying for silence, smart features, or a lifetime warranty. You're paying for reliable suction and decent capacity at a price that makes sense for occasional but important use. And judging by the volume of positive reviews in your reference, most buyers walk away feeling like they got exactly what they paid for, which is rare at this price point. Once you've cleaned up a mess properly instead of living with it, you stop questioning why this deserves a spot. And that sets up the next chapter nicely, because the next upgrade isn't about cleanup at all. It's about removing material fast when something needs to be cut, ground, or reshaped on the spot. Tool 2, Warrior 4.3, Amp 412-inch angle grinder. This is one of those tools that never looks impressive sitting in a toolbox, which is exactly why so many truck owners delay buying it. Then, the first time they're staring at a seized bolt, a rusted bracket, or a piece of metal that simply will not come apart the right way, the absence of an angle grinder becomes painfully obvious. Very few tools can solve as many problems as quickly for as little money as this one. At $14.99, this Warrior angle grinder isn't trying to compete with professional shop tools. Its value comes from immediate access to capability. The moment something needs to be cut, ground, cleaned, or removed entirely, this tool changes the situation fast. Rounded bolts, rusted hardware, bent metal, sharp edges, and stubborn parts that refuse to cooperate all stop being time-consuming fights once a grinder enters the picture. What makes it especially useful in a truck toolbox is how simple it is. There are no batteries to manage, no settings to adjust, and no learning curve to fight through. You plug it in, flip the switch, and it does exactly what you expect. That kind of simplicity matters when you're already frustrated, working in poor conditions, or trying to solve a problem quickly without turning a small issue into a bigger one. The 4.3 amp motor delivers plenty of power for real-world truck jobs. You're not fabricating frames or running it non-stop for hours. You're cutting off frozen bolts, trimming metal so parts fit again, cleaning corrosion from mounting surfaces, or knocking down edges that could cause damage later. For those tasks, the grinder provides more than enough performance without adding bulk or unnecessary weight to your toolbox. Small design details also play a bigger role than the price suggests. The locking slide switch makes longer cuts, and grinding passes easier by reducing hand fatigue, and the adjustable guard, along with the repositionable side handle, helps when you're forced to work at awkward angles around a truck bed, trailer, or hitch. These aren't luxury features, but they make the tool far more manageable in real-world use. The most important thing to understand is that this grinder is only as effective as the disc you put on it. It doesn't include a wheel, which means you have to plan ahead. A cut-off wheel turns it into a fast solution for stuck bolts and metal removal. A flap disc makes it ideal for smoothing edges and cleaning welds. And a wire wheel absolutely tears through rust and paint. Choose the wrong attachment, and the tool feels weak and frustrating. Choose the right one, and it suddenly feels far more capable than its price suggests. This isn't a finesse tool, and it isn't meant to be. It's loud, aggressive, and direct, which is exactly why it earns its place in a truck toolbox. When something is damaged, seized, or simply in the way, careful tools waste time. The angle grinder skips the argument and gets straight to the solution. That's why this upgrade ranks so high. It won't be used every day, but when it's needed, nothing else in the box truly replaces it. For the space it takes up and the cost involved, it may be one of the highest return on investment tools you can carry in a truck. That brings us to the final chapter, because the number one upgrade isn't about cutting or grinding at all. It's the most universally useful item in a truck toolbox, the kind of thing you'll use constantly and regret not having every time you need it. Tool 1. Hallmaster 2-inch ratcheting load straps. This is the upgrade that quietly does the most work, and that's exactly why it deserves the top spot. Not because it's impressive to look at, not because it feels powerful in your hand, but because it solves a problem that shows up again and again with truck ownership, keeping your load exactly where you put it. Anytime you haul something that isn't perfectly shaped, perfectly balanced, or permanently mounted, you're taking a risk. Lumber shifts, furniture slides, appliances tip. Even small loads can become dangerous if they move at the wrong time. These ratcheting load straps turn all of that uncertainty into control. For $11.99 per strap, you're getting a 27-foot, 2-inch wide tie-down rated for a 3,300-pound working load, with a brake strength around 5 tons. That distinction matters. Working load is what the strap is designed to handle, safely over and over, not the absolute failure point. For a pickup truck, this is exactly where you want to be. Strong enough to trust, without paying for capacity you'll never realistically use. What makes these especially valuable is how versatile they are. The J-style hooks work with bed anchors, rail systems, trailers, and even hook-to-hook setups when needed. That means you're not buying a strap that only works in one configuration. You're buying something that adapts to whatever you're hauling that day. They also respect the reality of a truck toolbox. Each strap weighs under 5 pounds, rolls up tight, and stores easily. No bulky cases, no awkward coils taking over your storage space. You can keep 2, 4, or 6 of these in your box without feeling like you sacrificed room for more important tools, because these are important tools. The long-term value shows up in the reviews. Thousands of buyers, consistently high ratings, and a pattern that's hard to ignore. When these finally wear out after years of use, people replace them with the same straps. That kind of repeat purchase isn't driven by hype. It's driven by trust built over real-world use. These straps don't announce themselves. They don't make noise. They don't feel exciting. But the first time you secure a load properly, drive without constantly checking your mirrors, and unload without finding damage, they prove their worth. And once that happens, you stop thinking of them as optional gear. That's why this is the one upgrade most people regret not buying sooner. Not because it's flashy, but because it's fundamental. That's the list. Every one of these upgrades earns its place because it actually gets used, not once, not just in case, but whenever real truck problems show up. None of them are about hype or brand loyalty. They're about making your truck easier, safer, and less frustrating to live with. If this breakdown helped you decide what to buy, what to skip, or what to stop overpaying for, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future lists that save you time and money without wasting either. Thanks for watching, and buy smart.